8 years old, my lonely self decided to make a terrible decision. I decided to start a conversation with my second grade teacher. Now don't get me wrong, I don't hate teachers or anything. In fact, I actually do enjoy being in their company. It's just that the conversation we shared was very awkward and really confusing for my second grade head to wrap her brain around. So, and being the person I am, the person who remembers every awkward moment in her life, I still remember it. So, it was during recess where little me, equipped with her pigtails, decided to sit down at the bench with her teacher instead of, I don't know, running around with her friends or doing whatever she did back in second grade. Now, after exchanging some awkward remarks, he sighed and gave me some advice. Advice that I will never forget. He said, "When you grow up, don't become a teacher." That's literally what he said. A teacher just told me not to become a teacher. At that time, I was very confused. I was shocked even when he went to explain that the pay wasn't great and it just wasn't a great deal to be in. I didn't understand. And he didn't want to elaborate anymore, so I just got up and left. But even after we left and the conversation had ended, the question still lingered in my mind. Why was he a teacher when he says the pay wasn't great? Now fast forward to a few months back where I, a 14-year-old, am reading a book called Attachments by Rowell. Now, the book is really good, actually, but for those who are in the audience who haven't read it yet, I don't really recommend it. I mean, the author is a great author and she writes really well, but the plot was a bit iffy. Anyways, disturbing plots aside, in the novel we are introduced to a character named Lincoln. And he is what I would call a complainer. Even though he has everything in the world, he has a good job, he has enough money, he has a roof over his house, he has great education, he is always unhappy. He's always constantly complaining about how sad his life is. And at the end of the novel, spoiler alert, he gets the girl and lives happily ever after. But even after I finished reading the novel, I wondered, why was Lincoln so unhappy? If you're quick-witted, you would have connected the dots by now. From both of my experiences, I realized my teacher was a teacher because he enjoyed being a teacher, and that Lincoln was unhappy because he had no purpose. Now this concept fascinated me a great deal. The reason I'm in school right now is so I could supposedly get a good job at a good university to make a lot of money and hopefully make me happy and successful. But from what I learned in my life, that isn't the case. So this is what I want to talk about today. Do we need money to be happy? And if we don't, what will make us happy? But before I even get into the correlation between money and happiness, we need to take a big step back. What is the meaning of happiness to you? Take a real moment to think about it. Does it involve eating ice cream on the beach as watching the sunset, or listening to music under the trees and feeling the autumn breeze? Well, for me, happiness is the feeling I receive when I accomplish something, whether it's as big as winning a sports trophy or as small as finishing a round of solitaire. It's the feeling that surges through me when I'm joking around with my friends or having fun. It's the feeling I get when I'm enjoying something close to my heart. It's the feeling that allows me to put a smile on my face and the feeling I get from putting a smile on others. However, growing up in a society like mine, where my parents, mostly my mom, enforces that happiness is not about when you're enjoying something, but it's about how successful you are. So now doing a Google search of the most successful people around the world will give you many celebrities like Beyonce and Kim Kardashian, as well as technology stars like Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates. Now, even though all these people come from different backgrounds with different livelihoods and probably live in different states, they have one thing in common, is that they're all rich. They own millions, even billions of dollars, and they're all considered successful. So if we use the transverse property of equality, a math joke that probably no one's going to get, we can see that money and happiness have a positive correlation. So maybe my teacher was just unhappy and I didn't notice, and maybe Lincoln was just unhappy because of plot. Maybe money does make us happy. But wait, we shouldn't jump to conclusions just yet. Imagine this. You've just won the lottery and $5 million are being deposited into your bank account. What would you do with all this money? Well, if you're like most people, you will probably go buy yourself some dinner. And then, the next day, you probably spend it on fashion designer clothes, expensive cars, fancy houses, new technology gadgets, and maybe spend it traveling around the world. Well, this may sound appealing, but it's surprising to find out that it isn't as nice as it seems. A study done by the UCLA and University of California, Berkeley found out that as people grew wealthier, they tended to value their independence more. And how did they do this? Well, you probably guessed it. They would buy big houses that were many rooms that separated them from their loved one. They built big fences around these houses that separated them from their neighbors, and they bought big electronic devices that would distract them from the relationships they have created. Now, as you can expect, this doesn't do well for their morale. This independence can lead to loneliness and, in the long term, depression. Now, personally, for me, I think depression is the opposite of happiness. Now, let's imagine that scenario again. Instead of you winning the lottery, your mom won the lottery, and she deposited $10 million into your bank account. What would you do with it? Would you buy books, jewelry, literally anything and everything? Probably. But do you ever think to give it to charity, to people in need? Well, if you did, give yourself a big round of applause because you're just a decent human being. If you didn't, that's okay. Don't worry because it's actually psychologically proven that you won't. A study conducted by the University of California, Berkeley found out that as people grew wealthier, they tended to become less generous. This was because wealthy people tend to view themselves as a higher status or a higher level than others and tend less to give to others. However, a study conducted by Journal Nature finds out that generosity actually makes you happier. This is backed up by the investigation that 93% of countries in the world are happier because they are generous. So it seems like you don't need money to be happy. In fact, it seems like money actually makes you depressed, lonely, selfish, and dominant. Words that I, and hopefully you all, don't correlate with the word happiness. So my second grade teacher must have really enjoyed teaching us. And now that we got his life in order, we still have to talk about our favorite character, Lincoln. So how do we solve Lincoln's problem? How can we make Lincoln happy? And so if money doesn't buy happiness, what can? So let's rewind back to the question I asked you earlier. What is happiness to you? As I mentioned in my definition of happiness, and based on the research done by Journal Nature, generosity makes us happy. Personally, I love giving gifts, more than I like receiving them. I like seeing the expression on people's faces when they get it, and I love putting the thought into it. Another thing you might correlate with happiness is relaxation, and this act is actually scientifically proven. When you're on vacation at the beach or at the mountains, when you're relaxing and you're stress-free, when you're eating properly and sleeping properly and not waking up as a cranky zombie, these are all moments that can make you happy. Talking about relaxing, you and me both probably relax using our smartphones. The world literally revolves around YouTube, Instagram, Twitter nowadays. And even though you might think you're happy on social media, you're probably not. A study conducted by the University of San Diego found out that if you get off social media, essentially the standards and the pressure of the world, and unplug yourself, you are gonna be happier. As my teacher once said, humans are social beings, and building relationships in real life is a very important part of being happier. Aren't you just having more fun when you're chilling with your friends or eating dinner with your parents than on Instagram? Have you ever had a situation where you're working on a group project and you're doing absolutely nothing? You feel extremely guilty, but you know that there's nothing for you to do. That's what not having a purpose feels like. This point actually applies most to Lincoln and is actually something the author tackles into the book. In the novel, Lincoln has no one to live for. He doesn't have relationships, have any friends. But by the end of the novel, he gets a girlfriend and thus has someone to live for. And like Lincoln, having a purpose makes you feel like you have some significance in the world and thus makes you happier. But the problem with money and happiness has never been a problem to begin with. No one doubts the fact that money doesn't make you happy because it's implemented into the society in such a way that it has become a way of life. And though I can't deny that money doesn't make me happy, I realized that there's so much more to life than money, like my second grade teacher and what Lincoln has faced. Life is about creating relationships, doing something you enjoy, treating yourself, giving to others, and finding a sense of purpose. It's about making yourself happy. So the next time you think of pursuing something you enjoy but don't think you'll earn enough, think back to me, my 8-year-old self, and my teacher, because everyone deserves to be happy, especially you.